At first, I didn't like this soundbar, but it's beginning to grow on me. Stay tuned to find out why. Hello YouTube, Chris the Frugal Audiophile here. Before you is the Polk Audio Sigma S2 soundbar. And I've heard from a couple of different sources that this is a really great soundbar for the price. And today we're going to see if it passes my frugality test. So if you want more information about the specifications of this soundbar, you have to look them up on the internet yourself. Right now in my hometown where I'm filming this, our internet is down. It's been actually down for over a day now, very frustrating. We don't know exactly what's going on. It was supposed to be back up this afternoon, but almost 5 o'clock and it's still down. So I can't look up the specifications right now. If you want more information, you can find them easily on the internet. Now, as we get into this review, I want you to keep your expectations in check. Now, that does not mean that you shouldn't expect something good from this soundbar, but just remember, it's a soundbar. It's a 1-inch by 2-inch, 34-inch tube that has to have amplification, electronics, speaker drivers, and all that stuff inside of it. So therefore, just keep your expectations in check. Also, it's 150 bucks. You know, that's a really good price, but you can't expect the world at that price. Also, as we go through this review, you're going to hear me say these 3 words a lot: for a soundbar. And that is because we just can't expect this little soundbar, little in comparison to like my Aperion Intimus 5T towers in there, to perform like larger speakers, more expensive speakers, a more expensive system. It just can't do that. Hopefully it will do some things well, and we will see as we get into this, but don't expect the world. So its assignment. The first thing is this soundbar needs to offer better performance than your TV's built-in speakers. So most of us will probably agree that the speakers built into most TVs are the suck. They just sound very flat and tinny. There's no bass, really no treble at all, at least no good treble. And not to mention, they're facing downward. So they're bouncing off your TV stand and then firing at you, causing all kinds of delays and issues there in the audio processing. So they're pretty bad. And so this soundbar just needs to be better than that. Not a real high task, but it has to be worth the price tag. It has to be that much better that it's worth it. And the next thing that it needs to do is offer some impactful sound for movies. Now, we all know that it's not going to be the same as larger speakers, but it should at least sound better. It should be more engaging. I should feel like I am more there than just using TV speakers or cheap, crappy speakers. And then it also needs to offer smooth frequency performance for music. It needs to not be really, really sibilant or have no bass to speak of. As we get into the review, we will see how it does there. So that's its assignment. It's 3-part assignment. So what did it get right? So the first thing this soundbar gets right is its compact size. If you are somewhere that space is limited, whether on your TV stand or maybe in a bedroom, or you're going to mount this onto a wall and you don't want a huge obtuse looking speaker, it's a perfect size for that. As you can see here, it's a fairly thin soundbar. This is a 32-inch TV that is behind it, so that gives you kind of an idea. It's an older TV, it's an older Samsung running my Roku there, but nevertheless, that kind of gives you an idea of its size. I'd say it's about 34 inches long by about 1 inch high by about 2 inches wide. And so it's pretty small. You can look up the specifics on that information there. And so it's a great size where space is limited. Next thing it gets right is that it is much better than most TV speakers. Now, that's not to say all TV speakers. I know that LG and Sony, on some of their more expensive models, they offer pretty decent speakers, but for the average TV, that's not the case. They're quite junky, and we all have experienced that before, being in places where we don't have access to our sound system, and so this just needs to be better than that. like I said, it's not that difficult of a task, but it is better. It's much better, actually. When I put on Aquaman to test out its performance, I was certainly drawn into the movie. The sound was engaging enough. It wasn't the same as a $3,000 home theater, but it was still pretty good. It certainly sounded more realistic. Vocals were nice and centered, and effects were clear. So it does a really good job there, and I was pretty impressed. And the next thing it has, and going along with that, is good channel separation for a soundbar. Oftentimes on these compact units, it sounds like the audio is coming just from the size of the soundbar. And when you enable movie mode on this soundbar, it sounds a little bit bigger than the actual size. It sounds as though effects are coming from outside of the soundbar. This is done through DSP, probably through some delay, some processing there, but nevertheless, it does work, and it does make the movie sound a little bit bigger. So yeah, that is channel separation. Now we have, along with that, is decent soundstage, and for a good soundstage, you need good channel separation. To test this out, I put on the song Cave by Yoshi Hirokawa. I talk about him a lot because his music is awesome for testing speaker quality. And this song was recorded inside of a cave. The artists in there were making sounds within this, and the samples that he put in it are from inside of a cave, whether it's chirping birds or Japanese drums being played. It's in a cave, and so if your speakers can do it, it can sound really huge, and it can sound as though you're inside this cave listening to this music. This soundbar gets close. It doesn't do it perfectly. It doesn't sound just, oh, it's so massive and I am just immersed in this cave, but it sounds pretty good. It definitely sounds better than like a little junky Bluetooth speaker would sound, or your phone speakers. Certainly better than that. So, or your TV speakers, not to mention. So it does a good job with channel separation, and that leads to good soundstage. A fairly good, somewhat 3D soundstage. I would say that it sounds wider than it does high, but that's not to say that it doesn't have some height in the sound. It just is not as good as what I've heard. So I'm not going to just gush all over it, but it does get that right. And the final thing it gets right is good imaging for a soundbar. Another Yoshi Hirokawa track I like to use to test is Letter, because in that track, and I think I talked about this before, his handwriting goes from left to right across the soundstage, and good speakers will seamlessly transition between left to right, and you won't even be able to tell that it's jumping from one speaker to the next as it does. And this soundbar, it did pretty good at that. I wouldn't say it was perfect. I heard a little bit of jump somewhere in the middle there as it went from the left driver to the right driver, but nevertheless, it did a pretty good job. Better than some other soundbars that I've heard. So yeah, I'm gonna give it good imaging, good imaging for a soundbar. So now the fun part, what it got wrong. And the first one is that bass basically bottoms out at 50 hertz. I played a frequency sweep from 10 hertz to 120 hertz, and there was really nothing until you hit about 30, and then it was pretty quiet. When it really started to come on, it was around 50 hertz. And that's when I believe that this driver really wants to be comfortably played, it is around about 50 hertz. Now, there is a little bit below that in the 40 hertz range, but you're starting to lose decibels as you get further and further away from 50 hertz. So don't expect deep, impactful bass. Now, what bass was there was tight, but it's not the best I've heard, also not the worst that I've heard, and so it just bottoms out there around about 50 hertz, which to me makes it not quite adequate for home theater, and that will be reflected in the grade. To test this, I played a song called Stars by Yoshi Hirokawa. There he is again. And in this song, there is a bass note that hits several times that I think it goes pretty close to 20 hertz. And most of the bass in this song is below 40 hertz because with the S2, there was hardly any bass at all to speak of in the song. I know it's there because I've heard it on better systems, and I've heard that song hit low. And so it failed that test quite profoundly. And then the next thing it gets wrong is that highs can get a little bit sibilant. Now, it's not awful, it's not the worst that I've heard, but it's also not the best that I've heard in this area. Now, my ears are slightly sensitive to sibilants. They're not the most sensitive. I'm sure there are people out there that are even more sensitive, but I do have a little bit of sensitivity to that. And so I can pick that up very quickly. And when I was playing some music through it, I heard it particularly on female vocals, like on the song The Special Two by Missy Higgins. I heard it in her voice, especially when she hit those S's, and you can hear it there. But not only that, the higher frequencies, they would hurt my ears just slightly, whether it be the cymbals or the digital effects, whatever it may be. They would just barely get there to the point of being sibilant and bother my ears. Would it be enough for me not to use a soundbar? I don't know. It would be close. I could see myself, maybe using it in a guest room where I'm not the main person using it, and it's plenty good for that. But for my everyday use, probably not. Because the final thing it gets wrong is that it really reaches distortion at higher volumes quicker than I would like. Now you look at the thing and it's compact, and as I said before, it's got to have a lot of components inside this small 34-inch by 2-inch tube. You see it there, and so they can only do so much with amplification. Likely it has a digital amplifier. I'm not sure the wattage. If I remember, I will look it up and post it on the screen here, but it is going to be a digital amplifier, and they typically reach distortion at about 60-70% of their maximum wattage, and I can feel that in the soundbar as I listen to it, particularly with music. I like to crank my music, maybe play a little louder than a normal person would, maybe louder than I should, but I do like to crank it. And I could not get this to a level where I would say, yeah, this is cranked and I am having a good time. That's not to say that it was awful and it didn't get plenty loud, but it just didn't get as loud as I would like. And as it started to approach 60-70% of its power, it started to distort and really hurt my ears. Now, I am playing this in my home theater, which is a treated room. Now, it's not a perfect room, but it's a treated room, and other speakers sound just fine at higher volumes than this soundbar did. So that's another thing to keep in mind. So those are the 3 things it got wrong. So it got 5 things right and 3 things wrong. And that is going to be reflected in its grade here as we go down to my Frugality grade rating. And for stereo music, I am going to give this a B-. And that is because that sibilance and the highs and the lack of being able to play very loud took off major points in this area. Now, B- is still a very good grade, and it's passable. It's usable. If it's all you had, you would be happy. It's certainly better than your TV speakers. It's better than a cheap Bluetooth speaker, but it did show some faults there. So I'm going to give it a B-. And then for home theater, I'm going to give it a B+. That is an area in which more present highs are something that you like, that is okay. It makes the makes the movie sound more impactful, more immersive. So it's okay. So I didn't take off as much there. Where it really got hit here hard was in the bass performance, because to me, 50 hertz drop off is just not a home theater sub. And so I took off a lot of points for that there in the area of home theater. So, but B+ is still really good. And remember, this is not in comparison to a $500 soundbar or a $3,000 home theater system. This is in comparison to other soundbars in its price range and built-in TV speakers. And how much better is it than these things? If you were going to give it an overall rating for home theater, of course, it would probably be down in the D or the F range in comparison to those systems, but it's a $150 soundbar. And for what it's supposed to do, it does it pretty well. That's why it gets a B+. So my recommendation for this soundbar is that it would be perfect for a smaller room, such as a bedroom, or I'd probably put it in my guest room. I have a 5.1 system in my bedroom. That's just me. Maybe you're not quite as crazy as I am. You don't need things as loud. It's for nighttime listening. So you just want something around about this $150, $200 range in your bedroom. this would be a perfect choice for that. Soundbars have come a long ways over the years, and you get a lot more bang for your buck than you used to, 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago. And so I think if that's what you're looking for, it would be great for that. And the second thing I'm going to recommend is that this would be a great Christmas present for mom and dad. While I'm filming this, it's December, it's the Christmas season of 2020, and so if you're looking for something for mom and dad to give them a gift, something to improve their TV sound, maybe they're complaining that the audio sounds tinny or it sounds muffled or they can't hear your vocals very well, this soundbar will help in that area, and so I would highly recommend that you consider it for them. I gave my parents the Vizio 2.1 30 or 29-inch soundbar a couple years ago, and they really love it. It's worked out great for them. I would say that this is a better soundbar than that one, but it's a few years later. It's a little newer product, and I would recommend this one over the Vizio. Now, the nice thing about the Vizio is that it's more compact, but it just doesn't sound quite as good as the Sigma S2 here. So that would be my two recommendations for this soundbar. As we end here, do you own this soundbar, and what do you think of it? Do you agree or disagree with my review? If you enjoyed this type of content, please consider subscribing or becoming a patron. Links to that in the description down below. Thank you for watching, and remember, frugal doesn't necessarily mean cheap.